Hello everybody, my name is Ittlebuff, and we are going over a crash course on making a walker. It's going to be very basic. It's still going to be probably kind of long, but I'm going to put little timestamps at the bottom. Huge thanks to Teddy Bear, Eagle, and Ace they've been showing me a lot on this stuff. So I'm still really new at it, but there's no other content on it besides Teddy Bear's video, which I will link down below. It's a good place to just go over some of the basic tools on here, because I'm not going to be going over that in this video. And his video also has some of the walker parts and importing of all these pieces here if you don't want to export them yourself out of the ModKit. So in case you don't know what program we are in, go to Unreal Engine here in your Epic Game app and download Unreal Engine 5.4.2 or whatever the latest version is. Once you are in here and you go to Teddy's video, download those assets or export them yourself, you want to go to your content drawer and import them up here. Your main area up here is going to be this modeling tab here. And like I said, I'm not going to go over all the controls and tools in here, but the basic move around, hold right click, WASD, and go into your content drawer, and we want to start off with whatever walker you kind of want to base it off of. And every walker is kind of different. So far I've done a Falcon. I'm working on like a small panda thing, but we are just going to go with the Falco for now. So when you have what walker you want out here in the world, you want to go over here to this location and make sure it's reset to 000. As if it's not, you will export it in an offset state. So it'll actually be offset like this. So for example, if you was getting rid of a Falco's body and replacing your body, and you exported this walker in this position and you replaced this one, it would end up to its left side just like that. So for just an example, we're just going to do a slight little modification to this Falco here, just to show that we are actually changing something in the game. For just to be basic, we could just make it a tiny little Falco. And we go down here to like mollusk and take a mollusk cage and stick it on there. And Teddy goes over some of the basic tools on cutting some of the stuff up, but a huge button that's been helping me. If you go in here while you're clicked on the Falco and you hit split, it's going to actually split up every little individual like plank. It might take a while for you to do it. But now every little plank in here and piece is actually movable. Like everything it thinks that could have been separated is now being able to be separated. Now before we export it, we want to make sure we reselect all these objects here, including our mollusk part. Make sure you don't have anything else selected but just the walker you're modding. Let's just merge that back together. And now let's say we're done with our walker, and now we want to try and put it into the game. So we want to move this back over to where your base walker is that you're wanting to kind of take over, and wherever you set this is how it's going to set into the body. So if you're wanting to make it a little lower than a Falco and a little more centered than a Falco, and maybe even you want it just a little more forward than a Falco. So now we're just going to hide this one. Click on our Falco here. And we're going to go here at the top left, File, Export Selected. Just make this Tutorial Falco. And on your export, make sure this FBX is set on 2018. It's very important, I was told. Not sure why. It's just what I was told. And export. And now that we're back over here on the ModKit, your area will be a little empty, of course. You want to go into your mods folder here, and let's import the Tutorial Falco. Mesh, import all. And don't worry about the no smoothing groups and whatnot. Error is fine. And now we have the little Falco we just created. And we might as well make a folder for it just to keep everything nice and neat. You can also just make a mod folder for it. We're going to have to do that later anyways. And move your mesh into your folder. All right, and if you open this by double clicking on it, you should be on this screen here. There's one major important thing in here. The other one is you can go in here and color it. It'll use the color assets it recognizes for a Falco already. Even the mollusk cage brought in the mollusk texture. So now the important part is if you hit show, click on simple collision and complex collision, it doesn't have like the correct collision. Right now, usually it actually has a giant box over your mesh itself, but currently it looks like the only collision that's showing is this one here, and you wouldn't even really be able to walk inside that. So you're gonna go to collision up here at the top, hit remove collision, and scroll down over here under the collision tab. We're going to change collision complexity, project default, use complex collision as simple. And now this is our new collision. So it's nice and tight to the body and you can actually walk around all that. And this collision, I'm pretty sure is just the main collision for like your player and stuff. This isn't what tells it to knock over a tree. It'll hit a tree, but it shouldn't knock over a tree. That makes sense. So we're going to save that. It's always a good idea to test this every step of the way. So you want to just pull your character over here, hit play, and make sure your character actually lands on it. And you can walk around. We are looking good. Now, there is a way to make your own collisions in here. You can make your own simple and complex collisions. It's a whole thing. I'm not too great at it, but you can add collisions and stuff here and edit them. We'll have to be kind of doing a little bit of that later when we get to the resource and like scenery collision box. So now that you have that done, we want to go back. We can just type in Falco in the content section and find the Falco, the one that has like the wings and everything in it. Its name is actually Falco in parentheses blueprint class. We want to copy that and paste that into our mod section here. And for some reason, it does it to me a lot. Whenever you go to rename this, it might crash you. I'm gonna rename this Falco tutorial. Hey, it didn't crash. We're gonna move that into our folder. We can get rid of this out of the world and double click to open up the blueprinted Falco. When I go to viewport here, now you're just gonna see a Falco. And then here is where you can do all your settings. Here's your collision damage. You can change this to make it to where like you knock down trees easier. You can change your movement speeds, all your scripting and everything's down here. I'm not going to go over all that in this video. It's pretty self-explanatory. They're all named pretty well. If you go into walker movement, then you can see like all your torque specs and your speeds and your RPMs and stuff like that. But focusing on getting the body done itself, every walker is going to be different. So some of them will have this mesh up here at the top. Some of them will have it like way down here. Like all this is just all the clutter. But once you find the one that you're wanting to change the mesh on, you go over here to the right. It says static mesh Falco. Just hit this back arrow. Search the one we are changing. Tutorial Falco. And now the little body is in there. And of course, all the clutter and everything doesn't fit. So really, you can just highlight all that and get rid of it. Every walker, I believe, has these flag mesh here. You don't need to just delete this over here. Just go over and click the back arrow on the actual mesh itself. You could make your own flags if you wanted to. And it would be the same as how we added the body of the Falco in. You just add in the flags you imported from wherever you made them from. Now, like I said, every walker is different. They should all have a few different collisions. So we created collisions for our body already. So we don't have to use like this collision here. This is their old main collision. Just hit the back button on here just to get rid of their collision mesh. And on player, same thing. You just get rid of that collision mesh. Ours has both already integrated into it. But if it's not already selected, you need to make sure you go down here to collision. And then on collision preset, we want this as walker buildable, walker part buildable. So that just basically tells it that it knows it's a walker and you are allowed to build on it. You can change no building zones and stuff like that, but that gets intricate and not for this video. So now we have our wings here, which are not set up correctly, and our legs are kind of in an okay spot, but still also not set up correctly. Everything else in here that's visible, you can move around. And this is where I was saying that you have to make sure you have everything zeroed before you export it, because if you export it and it's to the right like this, it'll snap into this position. And even if you move this over, for some reason, mine anyways, was looking correctly here, but the collision was actually over here. So you fell straight through the body there, but the collision was over here somewhere. So I was saying it's so important to make sure you export this at the right position and import it here. So on your wings and your legs, when you're moving these over to try and get them to line up, you just move these bubbles here. These are the sockets, and you won't see the part itself move until you hit compile, then save. And double click to open it back up. Go to viewport, and now your wings should be moved. So I'm not sure if there's a better way to reload this screen to actually do that, but it's kind of a whole thing. On the legs, it's exactly the same. If I clicked on a leg, you move this over and up and whatnot. Compile, save, it moves to where you want them moved. Now this next part's kind of an immersion breaking thing, but it's kind of important, especially if you have a Falco and you make it super wide or super narrow compared to an actual Falco. If you move these legs over, let's say you move these, you have to move these legs like over here to fit your modded walker body. The legs themselves do have collision, but they're not going to be where the actual walker walks, if that makes sense. You have to go into vehicle movement here because the walkers themselves don't actually walk on the legs, they walk on wheels. So here's the offset of all your wheels here. You got 0 through 3. And just to give a visual reference here real quick, we can add component. And a sphere. Just make 4 of them real quick. Go to vehicle movement, copy the offset, go to the sphere, and paste the location, and just do that with all 4 real quick. And now that you have those set, these spheres here aren't representing the size of the wheels, just the locations. So the wheels are here, so you can see if we ended up moving our leg way out past these spheres, your walker would actually be walking on these balls here, while your legs would be touching something else and your wheels wouldn't be touching it. And the wheel configuration and all that is something you'll just have to tinker with. I'm not going to go over that in this video. This is just a basic get your walker going kind of video. And now that we shrunk the Falco down, the interaction points are going to obviously be different as well. So if we go to the cargo up here, this is where the interaction point to the Falco was. You can just move this over to here. And you can actually change the shape of these as well if you didn't want your cargo interactions to be on like this kind of shape. So we just want to hit the back, and I kind of made my own for a different walker we can look at. There's rear cargo set. So this matches like the cargo on my other walker. So you can see now this is the shape of it instead. And now if you walk into this area where static mesh would be, this will be the interaction point. And to add the static mesh in itself, you should be able to just go here, just make a sphere, change the mesh, ultra rear cargo set. There you go. And you would do the same thing with the packing. It's the same thing we just did there. Move this wherever you want it, change the mesh out, add an actual mesh to it so it looks different than you want if that's what you're wanting. And all the settings for all that stuff is down here. These are all the scripts down here, so you can change like the packing type. Fast packing just means that's what they named the Falco. It's called the Fast Walker. So this runs under the fast packing set, which is like packing 400 pieces, I believe. Once you have everything set in there, you want to compile and save, and then we can show you the Falco collisions. I think all their collisions are probably up here. This is the scenery collision, and it's going to be much different than here. You can't see it in here. Now if we pull out our new walker here, I'm just going to move my player over here. And just before we get to the other collision, I forgot one other collision there was under the Falco, that is right here. Here's your no building collision. I'm going to turn that off too. All right, now if we hit play, our Falco should be sitting there with us able to walk on it, and our legs should be way off to the side. I think it's that one. Yeah. But we should be able to walk up here. We have our storage interactable. That's a piece that I didn't move that has nothing to do with our mesh. Now we go to free building tools. We can add some sticks to it. And you should be able to just drive around if our legs weren't stuck in a different Falco. But you get the idea there. So now if you go in here and do show collision, this hitbox that's way out here, this is the hitbox that basically tells the tree to fall over if it gets hit. This hits the ground, this hits trees, this hits structures. This is the main hitbox for that. As you can see, we wouldn't want that hitbox being that far out from the nose or that far out from the back. So for that hitbox itself, just go to Falco again. Should be right here. SM_Falco collision. We'll copy that. And those collisions are also already in your Unreal Editor here. It's right here. So you could actually place it over here and edit this yourself by making it smaller and bigger and doing what you want. And that's exported the same way that you would do any piece or any walker. Just make sure it's in the correct position, very close to the zeroed location. So we want to paste this over here. Okay, so for the collision itself, apparently you can't copy paste them to rename them like we did with everything else. It just crashes the mod kit. So we are going to just export this one here. Let's make sure it's however you want it to be. We're just going to have that as a test. And then we want to export just this. Export selected. We'll do tutorial Falco collision. Export that's the exact same way you do everything else. I come back over here, go to mods, import that collision, import all. And on here, I'm not sure if it's needed, but I think you have to hit the back button here on this mesh, so it doesn't have a mesh, so it ends up being invisible. I'm pretty sure you have to. And go to collision. Actually, we just show collision, see what's on it. So this is going to be the collision for this box. Now, if you got it the correct size that you wanted it, you can leave this. Or if it's not big enough, you don't have to go back into the editor and edit the actual mesh itself again. We could just go down here and click on the collision itself. And up here, it's all your scaling options. If it's not big enough, we can just make it bigger just like this. You don't have to change the mesh itself. This boundary is the only thing that actually matters. So we're going to save that. We're going to go back into our blueprint here, and it's the top one, at least for the Falco. And we're going to hit the back button, reset the default on the old collision, and add our collision. Just to make myself sane, we're going to move this back over here. And we're going to compile, save that, and now our little tutorial Falco here should have its new hitbox. Let me show collision, and there we go. Should be just a little bigger so you're not smacking the nose here. Because if the collision is inset like this, which it is on the default Falco, this nose right here will hit a tree, but that nose doesn't tell the tree to fall over. So you're just going to slam into a tree at full speed and nothing will happen until this collision hitbox here does. All right, now we have our walker basically finished. But now if we are in game, do free building, we go to walkers, we can see it's not in here. Now to make it buildable in game, we want to grab two main parts here. So since we're basing it off of the Falco, we are going to grab the construction Falco and this blueprint here that just says Falco. We're going to copy and paste it into our folder we're working with. And now, assuming or hopefully it won't crash, we want to change the name of the construction Falco. And now if we double click and open up the construction, you can change all of this here, which I did in the vulture. You can make your own custom pieces to do here. It's just like the same as doing the Falco blueprint. All you have to do is go over here to your static mesh and change this to whatever you want. So we could even, if we wanted to, we can make this look like the vulture. So if we place this down, it would look like this with the missing piece and that there. And then go down to construction site, inherited. We can go down here to the finished actors info array and change the class to our desired walker. We want to change this to this one here. We don't want to change it to our mesh. We want to change it to this one here, the blueprint. We compile and save and open up this one. And this is where everything's going to tell the menu basically what to do in the game. So we can change this here to tutorial Falco, change the description if you wanted to. And if you have a custom icon, you can change the icon here. And when we go down here to placeable actor class, we want to change this to our construction that we are doing. Construction Falco tutorial. That's telling it what to place. So now if we go into play, go to free building, should see our tutorial Falco. As you can see, it's missing the piece that we removed and put the vulture cage on the top. Now if we build this real quick, and now it transforms into our little mini Falco right before our eyes. Has our funky storage, has our packing, add the legs. And now we have a buildable, walkable walker that we created ourselves. Now without going through the icons and stuff, it's pretty well all exactly the same, just copy pasting from something else, renaming it, and making something your own. So like here's the two icons I just made in like a Photoshop. They are 200 by 200. Up here, imported 200 by 200. So this one's for the map. This one's the icon for the in-game, like where you go to build. And here's your settings for that icon. This is for the map one. You just put your map there. And this one inside the one we were just editing for our construction. This is the icon for that icon. And don't worry about all these extra spare parts I have in here. These are all the clutter parts that I have for my vulture. So you could do the same on your walker here. A lot of this stuff is from the Falco, but the clutter stuff doesn't have like collisions. So like I made this rear piece separate. I exported it separately out of Unreal Engine and then added it in here instead as a mesh so you can walk through that instead of it blocking you from dropping down off this deck. Same way with the gears, I imported them separate just so they can have a different color palette because otherwise it was coloring it the same as the body and they don't need collision. You can give them collision though. If you have a piece like say like this gear and you want it to have collision, same way as you gave the walker itself collision by scrolling down there and doing the use complex collision as simple. And if you want a clutter item not to have collision, just make sure it's removed here and make sure its collision is just project default. And the wheel settings, for the most part, every walker you can pretty well leave the wheel alone. You can just use it as the default from the walker you're basing it off of. I had to make my own wheel setup because the wheels on the Falco are really bad. They glitch all over the place and it had to be redone. Spare parts profile. This is if you want to change the recipes for your spare parts for like your torque upgrades and all of that. And there's so much more things we could have went into, but this video would be forever long. So just to make it as simple as I can, which we kind of already went into some things I didn't really need to, but now let's say you have your walker now. It's done. This is the way you want it. You go up here to mod manager. You can make a new mod. I accidentally jumped ahead of myself just a little bit. I forgot we need to take a picture. So this is going to be your thumbnail for your Steam Workshop. So I would probably do this like in game so, you know, it looks a little better. But you just do Windows Shift S or however you want to make a picture of something. And we all just love Mr. Microsoft Paint here. Just save that JPEG anywhere you want. And then when we go back to the mods folder, which this is red now, as you can see, like I said, I jumped ahead on accident. We'll show that in a second. Hit show in Explorer and drop your thumbnail here, your picture. So just for reference, if we go to Vulture, here's my picture right here. It's Vulture Preview. So now you want to go up to Mod Manager, and this is what I already did. I typed in the name of our folder and clicked New Mod. Type in your description. You can check your assets to cook. And it should have all the items that you have in that folder in here. If you don't, you have some kind of error. And then you hit cook assets, that'll cook it. I'm not going to because I don't want that. And then hit upload mod. And when you hit upload mod, it should go straight to your Steam. And this picture up here will populate by itself on the Steam Workshop. If you don't have a picture in there, it'll just tell you that there's no preview picture. So that should pretty well be that. I'm sorry if I missed something, but there is a lot of settings in there that you'll have to kind of figure out and play with yourself, like changing the recipe to the walkers and whatnot if you wanted to change that, or you can just leave it to the default. If you're taking over a Falco, you can just leave it as a Falco recipe. Like I said, this is pretty well just a kind of a crash and burn crash course we got here. I'm still learning myself, but there needed to be at least some kind of video on it so more people can kind of get into doing this stuff. I know people wanted to do this, they just don't really know how, kind of like I was. I really wanted to try it. I just didn't know where to begin. So hopefully that helped. You got any questions? Maybe I can answer them in the comments. As possible, I can't. I don't, like I said, I'm pretty new. So also, once again, huge thanks to Mighty Eagle, Teddy Bear for showing me pretty well everything here. And also thanks to Ace for showing me some of the more intricate stuff, like changing the recipes on these. Wouldn't have been able to do it without you guys, so appreciate it. And everyone take care.